understand that there are many ways by which disease can happen in an organism, right? Like it could be decided even before birth that the person will be born, the human will be born with certain issues, certain diseases, which we call as by birth neonatal diseases or genetic disorders mostly, or chromosomal abnormalities. Or there are also diseases which a human acquire post birth, right? You understand these two things, correct, Aisha? Yeah, great. Now, if I talk about, let me select a pen, yes. If I talk about first the concept of, before we go to disease, we have to understand what do we understand by the term health? What does health means? So can we, because we always understand, we always read health and disease. So we think that if something is problematic, then it's disease. And if there is no disease, then it's health, right? Yes, Aisha, great. You can join. I'll wait for a couple of minutes, no issues. Join back. Great. Can you hear me, Aisha?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. I can hear you as well. Yes, so that's great. So I was talking about, first, before we go to disease, we have to understand as to what do we mean by health. So what do you think is health? Like when can we say that a person is healthy? Is it just, can we say that if there is no disease that we can detect in a person, then the person is healthy?
State where person is having disease like mentally or physically very good.
Right. Yeah, great. So you, it's good that you already, you know, stepped into two different arenas. One is you're not just saying someone is healthy because it has no disease. Of course, a healthy person should not have any disease. Even if there is one single disease, you cannot call it a healthy person. So in today's world, that's very, very rare and very different, very difficult to be. But we can call someone healthy um, when it has no disease, but we just can't call them healthy if they have no physical ailment that is detectable. So health over the years is a widely discussed and studied topic. And earlier, the parameters in few decades ago, certain parameters that were not considered under health, now they are considered as a very important component of health. So we just do not simply define health as absence of a disease or physical fitness. We also define health as a overall holistic physical, mental, as well as social and emotional well-being. Okay. Excuse me. Yeah. So we added some parameters, physical, mental, and you also added a mental well-being parameter, but there's also social and emotional well-being. And mostly emotional is associated with, it's a product of mental and social, but it can also be studied separately. But when we include more than one parameters, health become multifactorial a thing. And that's why it also becomes even more difficult to say that if this person is healthy or not healthy. So we cannot talk in absolutes, because maybe a person has no physical ailment, also no mental issues, but still might have some social issues that not allowing the person to perform better or do its day-to-day activities properly. So still that person is not keeping very healthy. The appetite will be affected, the moods will be affected, the other things will be affected, right? Social issues can also lead to make a person angry, short-tempered, finicky, and all these things. So what we do now is we can talk in fractions, that the person is more or less more than around 70% healthy in terms of physical fitness, but still there is some component where the person is not doing very good. So health becomes a complicated thing. So is how to maintain all the aspects of health properly. But in today's chapter, in this chapter, we might not be able to touch upon all the aspects and study them in detail. I will try to discuss as much as we can, but we will mostly stick to the physical aspect of health, the physical well-being of health, in the absence of which you get certain diseases and disorders. But it's very important to tell you that health is not just absence of disease. Okay. So you can write down the first thing to begin with. Um, it is the overall or complete physical, mental, emotional, and social well-being. Okay. So if physical parameters is not the only thing to assess health, then how are we going to assess that if a person is healthy? So we have realized one thing, that whichever component is problematic, it affects a person's efficiency to work, right? If you are not physically healthy, you won't be able to work with 100% efficiency. It also holds true if you are not mentally, emotionally, and socially healthy. Okay. So we look at output, like if the person is finding it difficult to be efficient at work, or finding it difficult to maintain a day-to-day regular proper routine, then we say that the person is suffering from one or the other aspects of health issues. Okay, is that clear, Aishan Parker? Good evening, Parker. How are you?
Good evening, sir. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Great. So we were discussing health before we go to disease, and I was just saying in nutshell that it is not just absence of disease; it contains other parameters as well. Now, what are the major things then that we should take care of to maintain health? Of course, a lot of things. Balanced diet. First thing is nutrition. Nutrition is not only to keep you physically fit, but also proven to keep you mentally, emotionally fit as well. Because in all the things in our body work with on fuel, and nutrition is the fuel of our body. Then personal hygiene is very important, and both balanced diet and personal hygiene can prevent physical issues. But when someone asks, how should we keep our brain fit, our mind fit? So mind is nothing but a manifestation of an organ called brain. And it has been found that nothing works best or better than a regular exercise routine. So if you are doing regular exercise of any kind, that's very important to keep your brain healthy. Okay, there is no other way
Sir,
to keep your brain healthy. Yes, Parker.
sir, people say that eating almonds help you, remember things properly. Is it like scientifically proven?
Uh, as far as I know, there's no such study conducted where you give few people almond every day for a month or for 2 months or 6 months, and take another control group, don't give them almonds, and check and prove scientifically that almond helps. But I can understand why people say that, because dry fruits are good and rich in oils, natural oils. All the dry fruits have natural oil in them, and including the peanuts and all, and cholesterol. So cholesterol is very good for brain at early stage. Okay, it's not good for the body when you develop into an adult. So people cut on their cholesterol when they are in their mid ages. But as a kid or as a teenager or as in your 20s, it's not advised to cut on your natural oils and good cholesterol, because it's very important for neurons and for your brain. So that is one nutritional correlation, right? But if you say that a person never had almonds, which there are many people who are born and they live in depravity, they just get meals, but still they are brilliant, right? They're intelligent, they can function. For example, I'm sure that one of the greatest scientists of India and also the president of India, if we talk about APJ Abdul Kalam, he was not very well off, from a very well off family. I don't know if he had the privilege of having almonds and walnuts and all those things when he was a kid, but he was brilliant in studies and thinking and a lot of things right from the beginning. So we cannot make a direct causation, but yes, if you can eat them, you should eat them, because it will help. There's no harm. It won't cause you harm unless and until you are just eating almonds and nothing else. But it's good. It's good for brain. Oils are good for brain. Cholesterol is good for brain in early stages. Does that answer your question, Parker? So there is no yes, no answer to that. It's a part of nutrition, and of course, if you can, you should have it. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah. But it's not like it's the only thing that will help your brain, and if you don't have it, then your brain is doomed. It's not like that. Yeah. Is that clear? Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So great. So exercise is very important for brain, because one thing that brain requires a lot is oxygen, which is out there in the atmosphere. These days, cities are getting polluted, so there is a lot of other things apart from oxygen. But yes, if you are exercising, the oxygen input in your body increases because you breathe more, and so does the oxygen input for the brain increases, and the functionality of brain is directly that is not just a correlation, that is a proven scientific fact that if you are exercising, if you are active, your brain is healthier too. So a healthy brain only resides in a healthy body, as they say, right? So that's true. That is one thing which is scientifically proven. Okay. So if you are regular exercise doing person, your cognitive capabilities, your the way you think, your speed of accuracy of your thinking also goes up. Your learning and memory is also improved. Okay. Now, health is clear, right? So let's go to disease. So in this chapter, the second thing that we are talking about is disease. We'll not be going to mental diseases or mental disorders or emotional and social instabilities. We will only talk about physical diseases. So the word disease itself explains things. So it is dis-ease, right? So if you
Yes.
are doing if you are doing everything in your day-to-day life easily, you're waking up easily and you're eating and you're walking, and the next day you got a flu and you are not able to easily breathe or easily concentrate, then you have some kind of a dis-ease. So that's a disease, right? Disease can be a very acute short term or a very long term as well. But basically,
Yes.
when we but basically when we talk about diseases, we can categorize them to study better, um, from the point of from different point of views. So one is, um, you can broadly divide into two. One is called infectious, and I think you know the difference between both these categories. This we study from junior classes. So, and non-infectious. Yep. So what is infectious and non-infectious?
Infectious is like when a person is infected and like they sneeze or they do, and they
Huh?
cough, like the other person who comes in contact with the, the saliva or anything, they get infected. And
Mhm.
non-infectious is like it does not have to do anything with their coughing or sneezing. The person is not going to get affected. The person in contact.
Right. So you Right, perfect. So you touched upon a really good points. One is, so as the word says, infectious. So for infectious diseases to happen, you first need to get an infection. So you were happy and normal, and something infected you, and that something has to be a living organism, a microbe, a bacteria, a virus, or pathogen, right? So for infectious diseases to happen, a infection causing agent has to infect the body and then cause the disease. Correct? Make sense?
Yes.
Yes. And an aspect of infectious diseases is that almost most of the infectious diseases, I'm not saying all, but mostly, infectious diseases are also communicable. So there's another term, communicable diseases, right? So communicable diseases, as the word says, communicate. Just like I can tell you, I can communicate with you, which means I can transfer my thoughts or whatever I want to deliver as a message to you through speech. That's verbal communication. Disease can also be given from one person to another, not just through, you are right that it's mostly given through body fluids like saliva when you cough or sneeze, but it can also go through blood, which is another body fluid, and touch, right? Again, touch, where when you're touching, there are pathogens that may be on the surface of your skin, or mostly the skin diseases that happen due to infection can be passed on through touch. Okay, so touch, cough, sneeze, sharing water, meals. So most of the diseases get transmitted through one or the other mode, or more than one mode. So that's infectious. And as you said, non-infectious diseases are diseases that happen to a person because of, again, the non-infectious diseases also have multiple reasons. The most dominant reason in today's world for non-infectious diseases like diabetes and cancer to happen is lifestyle, right? How are we living? What is the status of your uh, fitness? What kind of food you are eating, if you are abusing any substance, etc., etc. If you are intaking tobacco, alcohol, and all these things affect a lot of diseases which are non-infectious. But these non-infectious diseases cannot be passed on from one person to another. It can only happen when more than when people behave or eat or live in similar kind of situations or environments. Okay. So drug and alcohol abuse can affect our body big time, our health big time, and can also lead to many non-infectious diseases. Okay, cancer is one such disease, but infectious diseases like AIDS, which is also fatal, can be passed on from one person to another, but through uh, body fluids like blood, most majorly not through saliva, but through blood and other internal body fluids.
COVID.
So we'll come. Yes, yes, Parker.
COVID.
COVID, yes, right. So we have been living in COVID. I just forgot it. Thanks for reminding. But we have we have gone through one pandemic, which was because of a virus, and that's a contagious, like it's an infectious disease, which is highly communicable and transmissible. Yeah. Okay. So coming to infectious can be transmitted from one person to another. And this is the second point. Actually, this should be the second point. First is caused by infection causing agents, mostly live pathogens. Non-infectious, what can cause non-infectious diseases?
Drugs.
Lifestyle
Alcohol.
issues, yeah, abuse of drugs and alcohol, tobacco, and interestingly, I mean, it's a very prevalent myth, or you should say, I should say, it's a very prevalent misinformation in many sections of society, which think that alcohol is more intoxicant, more dangerous to the body than tobacco. So you might see people very easily, without any problem, having cigarettes and other things, chewing tobacco or smoking tobacco, but thinking that alcohol will damage more. So the way these two things are abused is very different. First is alcohol goes into the stomach, so it goes through all the digestive system, and basically alcohol is so volatile before it goes into your digestive system thoroughly. It can be it actually evaporates, and it's absorbed by many tissues. So it's very easily goes into your bloodstream, okay, because it's a spirit. And but the thing is, alcohol can be, if in a limited quantity, it can be broken because it's a carbon source. It can be broken, utilized by the body, and whatever is excess can be thrown out of the body also. But many things that we smoke, they go into the lungs, and lungs do not have a filtration system apart from just filtering CO2 that we exhale out. Most of the things like that smoke contains, many chemicals that smoking a cigarette contains, they get deposited in the alveoli over time, and they have no other output. So lungs, once damaged, you cannot make it better by doing anything. You cannot clean it after time. So if a person is abusing alcohol, the person can go to rehab, get over it, leave it, and can again come back to restoring the body health. But if someone is abusing tobacco, cigarettes, and all these smoking stuff, mostly the health of the lungs do not, they keep on deteriorating, okay, um, over time. Makes sense because it has no output. So we also have to understand scientifically how much damage each component of abuse causes. Okay, not all drugs can be abused the same. Some drugs are very, very fatal, even in low doses. Some drugs have more tolerance, like alcohol and tobacco. So people abuse them more than other drugs. Okay, but it shouldn't be done, is what my point is.
Sir,
Yes, go ahead, Parker.
sir, some people, even without smoking, like for example, children, they end up getting cancer. Like, how is that
Right.
possible? Like without drugs and all that.
Yes. So cancer is something very complicated, a disease. Nicotine is one of the things that can cause cancer. Nicotine is a carcinogen. So as a chemical, it's a carcinogenic chemical. When it goes inside the system, it has more potential to cause cancer in any cell. But even it's not like only people who will smoke or will drink will have cancer. Cancer can also be caused by inherent defects in the genetics or in the system, and the tendency to get a cancer can also run in families. So there is a gene called BRCA1. This gene was isolated. It was seen that when this gene is mutated, the mutated version of that gene can cause cancer if it's mutated. And it was first studied and identified from a breast cancer patient. So BR stands for breast and CS stands for cancer. So it's called breast cancer 1 gene. If this gene is non-mutated, this gene is, by the way, present in every human. It's present in us, all of us, and it does some normal functions. But when it gets mutated, it can cause cancer. So for this mutation to happen, you do not have to be smoking or drinking. It could be like a by birth mutation, or it could, happen after birth due to exposure to other things as well. Doesn't so? For example, exposure to UV can cause skin cancer. Now, that can happen to a child, that can happen to an adult, that can happen to an old person, regardless. And genetic mutations or tendency. So if in a family runs the the chances of like high cancer occurrence, like grandparents had, and before that great grandparents had, one of the parent also got in later ages, then it's also can be found more prevalent in families. So cancer can happen. We understand a lot, but yet very little about how to cure. It's a race, Some people, some scientists actually do believe that we will always be fighting cancer, but we will in reality never be able to eradicate cancer because it's there inside us all the time. It's just that in some people it's not happening, in some people it does happen. And if you see what is cancer, it's just that cells divide and they don't stop, right? So if you see a growing
Yes.
embryo, what is a growing embryo? A growing embryo isn't it equivalent to a cancer tissue? But there we differentiate it from a cancer tissue by saying that everything is programmed there. Everything has a limit. Everything knows till when to divide and when to stop. But it rapidly keeps dividing, right? There. So basically, cancer is a tumor. But how is it different from non-cancerous tumors? We will come to all of that in detail because in this chapter we are studying cancer in detail. But think about it. Cancer is just a tumor. There are also tumors in body that happen, but we don't call it cancerous. So we will only call something as cancerous when it has the tendency to spread. If there's a tumor in the body, but it's localized, you will just call it tumor, not cancer, right? And if you see early development, there are lots and lots of tumor that forms, basically, like lots and lots of cell grow and divide rapidly. But it's just the very fine line between calling this tumor as now it became cancerous. And that can happen without drug abuse also. Yeah, Parker?
Yes, sir.
We'll talk about it in detail, don't worry. So we'll cover cancer in some greater depth. Okay. So non-infectious are lifestyle issues, abuse of drug, alcohol, tobacco. One thing that we missed, like you just reminded me, is mutations. Okay. And it can't be transmitted, okay, from one person to another. Now, if we talk about some common diseases and most common cause of a disease, what do you think causes a disease? Most common cause of disease?
Germs.
Exactly.
Pathogen.
Exactly. You call it pathogens, germs, you call it infection causing agents, anything. They are the most common cause of diseases, right? So, more than cancer, everyone on the planet gets viral flu, gets some or the other kind of cold, which is again flu. We get bacterial infections every now and then, for which we take antibiotics and recover fast. We get fungal infections. So, all these diseases which are caused by organisms called pathogens are one of the most common diseases, right? So, and most of these pathogens are basically also parasitic. They love, why do they enter in our body? Because they can replicate in our body, which they cannot do outside the body, right? So they use us as host, increase their number, and when they increase their number, they also are producing toxins, uh, which start affecting us and our health, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let's take an example of any pathogen that cause a disease. So there are some common diseases in your textbook, and I'm sure that you will eventually come to those. So do you remember any disease which any one of you got as a kid, or you saw someone getting as a kid? Some very common diseases which not I'm not talking about just a common cold or a flu, but something which is actually severe also, and we know it happened because of a pathogen. Any one of you have seen someone, or you got pneumonia ever? Pneumonia is one disease, that pathogen based disease that happens in countries where um, there's a lot of water that gets accumulated either by rain or floods, and there's not proper hygiene, or you drink water that's contaminated by a bacteria called streptococcus pneumoniae. So the same name. So for you know pneumonia, it affects lungs. It's an infection of bacteria that affects lungs, right? And the causative agent is streptococcus, and it tells you that it's a cocci shaped bacteria, right? Just like bacillus, it's a coccus. And pneumonia. Okay. Also, apart from this one, sometimes it's a mixed infection, not just this, but another bacteria called Haemophilus influenzae. Where have you heard this name before? Quickly. Both of these cause pneumonia. It could be like, mostly it's in a mixed infection. Even if it's an isolated infection, it will cause pneumonia, whether streptococcus or Haemophilus influenzae. Where have you heard Haemophilus influenzae? I think in the last chapter, last to last, we talked about this bacteria. In what context? Anyone remembers?
It
Parker? Aish? Yeah.
it infects children.
Yeah, but in biotechnology, why did we discuss this bacteria? We didn't discuss, but the name came up. Anything you can connect dots to? See, HIN. Anything? Rings the bell? Hind 2. What was this?
It was a type of a bacteria. It was a type of bacteria.
Hind 2 is not a bacteria. Haemophilus influenza is a bacteria. Hind 2 is a restriction endonuclease, remember?
Yes, sir. Restriction endonuclease.
Yes,
I
we
remember
use
it
this
by
as a cloning site in the plasmid, right? In the plasmid, we have a
yes,
site
sir.
for Hind 2. It was the first restriction endonuclease to be isolated,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Hind 2.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was isolated from Haemophilus influenza. H, the first letter is for the genus, IN is for influenza, D is the strain D of Haemophilus influenza, and 2 is the order in which it was isolated. Don't forget, so this is just about connecting dots. And we know that this bacteria causes infection in humans also, which is called as pneumonia. Now, what happens in pneumonia? So for every disease that we're going to study, what we're going to do is we're going to study the causative agent. Then we're going to study symptoms and mechanism. So what happens in pneumonia? It infects this bacteria, Haemophilus influenzae. It infects the lungs. So infection in alveoli of lungs. You know what are alveoli, right? The air sacs.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So these alveoli basically are air bags. But when this infection happens, a lot of fluid gets deposited in these alveoli. And if you fill fluid in an air passage, then of course you will not be able to breathe properly. So in pneumonia, people have breathing issues. And if you remember, when world was suffering from COVID pandemic, pneumonia-like symptoms used to come in the lungs, right? So COVID also was affecting the respiratory system only like pneumonia, but it's a bacteria. COVID was a virus. And it would also lead to, in severe cases, fluid deposition in the lungs, right? Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
So people were not able to breathe. Their SpO2 levels, which is the partial pressure of oxygen levels, were very, very low, and people were put on ventilators so that they can breathe, and they were fluid filled in their lungs. So it was very, very bad a situation. So same thing happens in pneumonia. If anyone is affected by this bacteria, through mostly it happens through um, cold. First cold will happen, and then you get this infection when your immune system is low, or through infected food and water. So the symptoms are fever, okay, because of this fluid infection in alveoli, fluid filled lungs, and because of this there is respiratory issues. So difficulty in breathing, you can write. Okay. And what are the symptoms? People get fever, very strong cold chills. Okay. And of course, anything affects the lung, you get cough.
Mhm.
And because of cough, you will have headache. Yeah. So these are the major symptoms. Very severe symptoms, I'll write in red. So every disease. So normally, if anyone has pneumonia, they will be admitted to hospital, and before their symptoms become too severe, doctors will treat the disease, right? So the person will be saved because now we have ways by which we can treat very easily, like thanks to medical advancement. But in cases where pneumonia is not treated effectively or in time, there are some severe symptoms. Like severe symptoms are which happens when the person is almost about to succumb to that disease. And in this case, the severe symptom is related to the lungs being unable to send oxygen to the body. So if the body will have less and lesser oxygen over time, what will happen? The ends, like the terminal ends of our body will not get any oxygen, right? The heart will still get oxygen, whatever oxygen is there in the blood. But if we talk about the fingertips, the nails, fingernails, lips, ears, your toenails, they will stop getting oxygen, right? So severe symptoms includes lips, fingernails becomes bluish gray in the absence of oxygen. Okay. So basically cells in these regions start to die, and there's no coming back from here sometimes. And how can a healthy person get pneumonia? It can be that you inhaled the infection through droplets, or the bacteria was present in droplets, aerosols from an infected person. So when you and remember that it is a infectious disease, it can be transmitted. So when we treat a pneumonia patient, we also take care that we don't acquire the disease. It can be easily acquired by inhaling the droplets or aerosols that has come out from the infected person's body, or by drinking or eating in the same utensils, sharing the glasses, etc. Okay. So this is a bacterial disease, right? These two are, let me write here, they are bacteria. Any other bacterial disease you know of? Other bacterial diseases? Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Tuberculosis.
Come on, come again.
Tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis. Yes, right. That's actually, yeah, it's a mycobacterium, but yes, let's say it's a bacteria. It's a more resilient form of bacteria, where it has a mycolic sheath around it. So it's called mycobacteria. And that's why tuberculosis is more um, dangerous than other bacterial diseases. So you're right, tuberculosis. And this also affects lungs, right? Mostly. So some people think that tuberculosis only happen in lungs. It also happens in lung. Tuberculosis is a mycobacterium that can affect liver and even bones. Okay, so there is tuberculosis of the bones, there is tuberculosis in liver, and tuberculosis of lung. So tuberculosis in the lung is the most common one. And what is the causative agent of tuberculosis? So let me list these diseases and give you a homework. So tuberculosis is one. Have you heard of dysentery? Dysentery is another bacterial disease. Plague. In earlier times, plague was a big
Yes.
reason. Yeah, and because of which cities have been wiped out. So Europeans were very advanced in their architecture and civil engineering. So what they did, you will see that the Western countries, they have concept of humongous sewers. So their sewer lines are very, very huge and underground, right? So when they built a lot of underground huge sewers, they thought that, okay, now the problem of hygiene in the city is solved, because all the all the fecal matter, all the waste is flowing beneath the city, so no problem. But they forgot that these places, because they are huge, they will also allow and harbor lots of animals that live in unhygienic conditions to grow. So sewers became a breeding place for rodents, especially the rats. And these big rats contains pathogens, these bacteria, because they live in sewers, and bacteria grow very easily in these dirty sewer water. These big rats have no one to hunt or kill because cats, the natural predators, cannot go inside the sewer and live there to eat rats. And so they were growing, flourishing, and then they started affecting. They could come from the sewers out in the open, infect something in the vicinity, and then humans can get infection from that. And plague just, kind of haunted cities and cities. Mm, there are places where almost two-thirds of the population of the city got wiped out because of plague in medieval times. So it was a very big issue. Nowadays, it's not that huge an issue, because for other reasons as well. And then there is something called diphtheria. You know about diphtheria? The whooping cough. It also affects lung. So these are some of the other bacterial diseases. And now what I want you to do is you can add to this list of bacterial diseases, and you have to find the name, the scientific name of causative agent, like the bacteria which causes it. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Write these names, write these down, and you will go and do it after the class. Written, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now let's talk about some viral diseases now.
Sir,
Yes, go ahead.
sir, can you please scroll up?
Yes, sure. Here, or you want to note the name of the diseases?
Yes, sir. I want to know the names.
Okay, can you see the names?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me know when you're done.
Done, sir.
Okay. Perfect. So now let's go and talk about some other vectors. Let's talk about viral diseases. The first one, like to begin with, I think will be the COVID, right? Though it's not in your textbook, but your textbook were written before COVID. That's why. It's important to understand this as well. So COVID is a very important example. What does COVID stands for, by the way? It's called COVID-19. Anyone knows why it's called COVID-19? What is COVID in
Coronavirus
itself? And
disease.
yeah, CO stands for corona, VI is for virus, and D is for disease. And what is 19?
The
Yeah, the year in which it started. The first case was found in December 2019 in Wuhan, China. So that's why the name was given, because uh, the COVID-19 is not the first or the only disease caused by coronavirus. So coronavirus, we knew about coronavirus from a very long time. It's like coronavirus were discovered, I think, in the 1950s or 60s. And since then, people are studying coronavirus and how they can affect respiratory systems. And even before COVID-19, there have been coronavirus epidemics and pandemics. If you remember, SARS-CoV-1. So this is called SARS-CoV-2. SARS-CoV-2, the virus. Before that, SARS-CoV-1, that called the SARS disease, severe acute respiratory syndrome. Anyone have heard of it? SARS?
Yes,
SARS.
sir.
It happened. Yeah, it happened in Asia, majorly the Asian continent. So SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, was also caused by a coronavirus. It was called SARS coronavirus 1. And COVID-19 was caused by another variant of coronavirus, like a cousin of the same virus called SARS-CoV-2, SARS-CoV-2, because this also affects the lungs and causes a severe acute respiratory issue. Apart from that, if you remember, there was something called MERS. It was an epidemic limited to Middle East because the virus also could affect camels, and through camels it used to come to humans. And so it it did spread a lot in the Middle East. So the name is called MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. Anyone of you is aware of MERS?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So that's also another disease caused by a family of coronavirus. Okay. So why it's called coronavirus? Because the structure of virus is something like the word corona is used for sun, the surface of the sun is called corona. So this virus has spike proteins on the surface. It's a spherical virus with spike proteins on the surface that gives it a impression of like a sun. So this is why it's called coronavirus, and there are many such viruses. The good thing is all of them are not pathogenic to humans, so they don't recognize humans as host, but other organisms. Even COVID-19 is believed that it jumped because of it's a zoonotic spill. It jumped from pangolins and bats and to humans as a host. And that's why it started causing disease all of a sudden. It's not like the virus was not present before 2019. Like many cultures, faiths, and people, whenever these such kind of pandemic and epidemics happen, they believe that it's sent. This virus has been sent to punish humans, and this virus started attacking because it's like a punishment. But this virus was always around us, but not affecting humans. There are millions and millions of such viruses and bacteria that do not affect humans. But sometimes this zoonotic spill happens because of which a virus can change host. It happened in a classic case of Nipah. If any one of you know about Nipah, it started in India, I guess. Nipah virus, NIPH. Anyone know about this? So what happened? It changed from like it started recognizing humans, and even with the SARS, the first SARS one, like the epidemic started, a lot of people started getting affected, and before too much of damage could be caused, and before scientists could successfully make something to fight it, make a vaccine, it again changed the host. So it was not affecting humans any longer. So the infection rate declined on its own, without even we having a full-fledged war against the SARS one. We have a question in the chat from Parker. Omicron also had similar symptoms of COVID. So is it another disease from coronavirus? Omicron is coronavirus only. It's not another disease. These are all variants or mutant, different naturally mutated variants of coronavirus. So if you remember, coronavirus, when it was first isolated and you sequenced it, you named it coronavirus. The alpha strain, beta strain, gamma strain, and all these epsilon, omicron is another strain. So these are all strains because virus mutate very fast and it changes its genome quickly. So omicron is nothing but a coronavirus only, and it causes COVID-19 only. Make sense, Parker? It is more transmissible form of COVID-19 virus. Okay, so COVID-19 is one, but what you have to pay attention to is another thing. We don't have to even go to COVID-19, and the causative agent here is coronavirus. Okay. We also get common cold, right? The common cold also happens because of a virus. And actually, common cold does not happen just because of one virus, but it's like a cocktail of viruses that every year cause common cold. So have you ever thought, for coronavirus, they give us vaccines, right? And if you take the vaccines, the chances of you getting affected from the same strain of virus is very, very low, because that's how vaccines work, and they can give you immunity against the same strain, mostly, or multi strains also. But till date, there has never been anything that you can take and you can say that, okay, this year you had common cold, next year you won't have common cold. Every year we get common cold. Yes or no? But since it is not a fatal or very, very problematic a disease, it happens, we get isolated, we start drinking hot beverages, we take symptomatic treatment, and in 3 to 5 days, it goes on its own. Right? So a group of viruses known as rhinovirus causes common cold. And rhinoviruses are a group of, so there are many different kind of viruses which are a cocktail, and they are most infectious. So they are not very fatal, they are not very lethal, and their infection does not cause too much of damage, but the infection can happen very quickly. So it is very, very infectious, but less lethal. Okay. And a good virus actually should be like that. A good virus should be very, very infectious, but should not cause a lot of damage to the host. Because if you are causing infection and if you are killing the host, then over time there'll be no host to host you. So the virus also will also, so if virus keeps killing host, then after one point of time there'll be no host, right? So naturally, from virus point of view, that's not a very good thing. So a good virus will be very intelligent. What it will do is it will infect very fast, quickly, within minutes, and then will not affect the host too much, will not kill the host, but the host will also live and the virus will also multiply and live. And then it will go and infect more hosts, and from there more hosts, and keep multiplying because the hosts are not dying. So one such virus is rhinovirus that causes cold every year. And these viruses infect the nose and respiratory passage, but they're called rhino because they live in the nose and the upper respiratory tract, but they do not infect the lungs. Infect nose and upper respiratory tract, which means still throat, your windpipe. But they do not, just remember this thing, rhinoviruses do not infect lungs. Okay, so you don't have breathing problems. You might feel difficulty in breathing because your nose is clogged, but that is a different breathing problem from the one that happens because of COVID or pneumonia, where the lungs are infected and technically the person cannot breathe through lungs. Okay, so there is nasal congestion, but not lung congestion. So nasal congestion, nasal discharge, sore throat, throat pain, cough, headache, tiredness, fatigue. It all happens in when you are affected by rhinovirus. Okay, and it usually, even if we do treatment, we take symptomatic treatment, like for fever we take paracetamol, and if there's too much of pain we take some pain reliever or nasal congestion reliever also. You take steam and all those things. We drink herbal tea, um, do all these things. But even if you do not take symptomatic treatment, common cold mostly on its own will be gone in 5 to 7 days at max, because body over the time, the immune system, if you have a normal functioning immune system, if you are not immunocompromised, then it will take care and it will always win the fight within a week. Okay, is that clear, everyone? Aisha, Parker, and Rabia?
Yes.
Yeah, so the important thing about rhinoviruses is they affect nose and upper respiratory tract and causes issues there. which gets sorted in a week. And how can you, this is also a transmissive. Like if one person in the house have common cold, you can just give it to the whole house, every member, by droplets that come out through cough and sneeze. So the best thing is just a little bit of self-isolation, maintain distance, wear a mask, and then everyone else is safe. And don't share objects like pen, books, mugs, coffee mugs, plates, etc. Don't work in common spaces if you have common cold. So that way you will prevent other people from getting cold. Okay. So one thing about viral diseases, whether it is, and we will also talk about a viral disease in detail, which is AIDS. It's another viral disease, HIV. I'm just listing it here, but we will not be doing it in detail here. So this is second. And I'm listing third one, which is AIDS. AIDS is it actually is called acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. The causative agent is a virus, and in this case, it is a retrovirus called human immunodeficiency virus, HIV short. So when you go for ELISA test, they look for HIV positive or HIV negative. So if this virus has attacked, then this disease which is caused by this virus is called AIDS, and it's a syndrome. There's a difference between a disease and a syndrome. For example, pneumonia is a disease, and there are some symptoms of pneumonia that are standard, that will happen to everyone who has pneumonia, right? So when, like diabetes, everyone, you know that if someone has a diabetes, they will have their blood sugar level high, right? And other consequences of diabetes will also be there. If someone has pneumonia, like I was saying, there'll be lungs filled with water, difficulty in breathing. If someone has common cold, all these things are diseases. AIDS is slightly different because it does not have one fixed symptom. So it's a syndrome. It's a aggregation of multiple diseases that can happen because your immune system is out. It has fallen. So HIV, which is a virus, it attacks T cells of our body. T cells help in immunity a big time. So when they are gone, immune system is compromised. And since your immune system is compromised, an HIV positive patients, the patient of AIDS, can technically get anything. It can get pneumonia because the lungs will be infected very easily. It can get a hepatitis, disease of the liver. It can get skin infections very easily. So any sort of infection will very easily happen to a AIDS patient because the immune system is not there. So that's why the symptoms are not the same for everyone suffering from AIDS. That's why it's called a syndrome and not a disease per se. Is that clear, everyone? We'll talk about AIDS also in much detail, like cancer later on. Okay, Parker, you have a question?
No, sir.
Okay, clear till here? Viral diseases, the basic is clear. Any doubts, any questions, anyone? Yes, no?
No.
No. Okay. So tell me, we talked about bacterial disease, we talked about viral disease, we will talk about AIDS in detail later on. But is there anything else apart from bacteria and virus that can cause diseases? We talked there is fungi, right? I think fungal disease is not in your syllabus, but still, if someone wishes, we can talk about it. So fungal diseases are mostly they affect skins. Fungal diseases affect skins and places which are moist. So the moist region, because fungus requires damp and humid places to grow. during COVID also, one of the overriding infection because of a COVID infection was a black fungus infection that some patients saw, right? The black fungus is a very deadly fungus, and white fungus, black and white both. They can infect deep tissues like muscles, soft tissues like muscles, muscles of organs, eyes. They can infect. They basically grow their hyphae, the myceliums, into the tissue, and that's a very dangerous infection if it happens inside, because there you cannot apply any antifungal as well. But normal ones happens around toenails or in between your toes. They very easily can catch fungal diseases if you are not keeping them clean. And fungal diseases can be prevented very easily also. Just keep cleaning the softer tissues which are exposed or damp parts of your body, like your back of the ears, your foldable skins throughout. Scalp can easily get a fungal disease if not cleaned properly, because there is hair, and if there is sweat, it will be damp. So cleaning it regularly is very important. So that's why I think they're not talking about fungal diseases a lot in this chapter. But apart from it, anything else that you can think can cause disease in humans? Bacteria, virus, fungus? Something that's also disease causing is protozoans, right? You know about protozoans? The protozoa, they are called primitive animals. In classification, the 5 kingdom classification, remember? Robert H. Whitaker studying class 11th. So protozoan. And one such disease that is caused by protozoa is malaria. And I think this is very extensively discussed and it is in your syllabus. Well, what is malaria? Have you heard of malaria, people? Is malaria prevalent? Does it happen seasonally where you live? Or no?
No.
It's a
No.
big problem. Yeah, it's a big because in Middle East, I think there are not many mosquitoes. Are there? No, right?
Yes, sir. No.
No.
No mosquitoes, right?
One or
And
two we'll
mosquitoes
see.
are, yeah, very few you'll see, right? Because mosquitoes need some proper environment that Middle East does not have, and because there are no mosquitoes, they are the vectors for this pathogen. They carry this pathogen in their salivary glands, and that's how malaria spreads from person to person. Okay, it's not. It gets transferred through person to person through a vector. It's not like if a person has malaria, the person can give malaria to another person by a touch or something. Okay, but it can be spread if body fluids are exchanged where these sporozoites are present, which I will talk about in some time. But malaria is a disease which is caused by, what is the causative agent? It's a protozoa called Plasmodium. Okay,
Yes, sir.
Plasmodium causes malaria, and there are different types of Plasmodium that cause malaria. So some forms of malaria, some types of malarias are more severe than other types of malaria, and some are more common than other types of malaria. So from many years, I think from decades now, we are fighting malaria as a disease, and it's a big issue in India, some certain parts of India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and also in Africa. So Africa is the place where which is affected by malaria the most. Okay, so from the global cases, from all the deaths that happen due to malaria, if I'm not wrong, around 90% is in Africa only. Okay, so Plasmodium has many different species. One is called vivax, Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium malaria itself. The name was given on this, Plasmodium malaria. And then there is Plasmodium falciparum, which is very common, and ovale, Plasmodium ovale. So vivax, malaria, and falciparum are more common, with falciparum being the most common. In India, most of the malarial cases happen because of malaria falciparum. And vivax is, I think, more dangerous, but less prevalent. Malaria caused by Plasmodium vivax. So these are different species: Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium malaria, Plasmodium falciparum, and Plasmodium ovale. Okay, and so they are the causative agent. Causative agent, but how do these pathogens reach human? So for this causative agent to transfer it to humans, there is a vector that's required, and that vector is a female Anopheles mosquito. In places where there are no female Anopheles mosquito, you will also not have malaria very prevalent, right? And all female Anopheles mosquito do not cause malaria. So it's not like if an Anopheles mosquito bit you, you are going to now get malaria for sure. If that mosquito itself is infected by this pathogen, and how are they infected? This female Anopheles picked up the protozoa from nature, and this protozoa starts living in the salivary glands of the mosquito. And interestingly, it does not cause any harm to mosquito. And you can understand why, right? If something is carrying you somewhere, you will not like to cause harm to that vector, right? So that's why it's called vector. And Anopheles is always at advantage if there are more and more vectors. So vectors are not affected by itself, by the pathogen itself. And through this vector, it comes to human. And that's how a healthy human gets malaria. Okay. So let's talk about it in some detail in today's class. We will be spending most of the rest of the class to understand malaria. Let me pick out a picture. I think it's from your book. Can you see this image, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can also open this image in your textbooks. This is taken from your textbook only. Yeah, is it clearly visible? Should I enlarge it, or is it fine?
It's fine, sir.
Okay. Now, since it's a cycle, you can technically start from anywhere, but the good thing is let's say this is the first instance that happened, that a female, this is the female Anopheles mosquito that's infected. Okay, it already has the infection. Now it came and bit a human. So when a mosquito bites another, in this case a human, sporozoites. So sporozoites are the stage of this pathogen's life cycle. So these sporozoites live in the salivary gland of the mosquito. So you can write down: Plasmodium enters the human body as sporozoites, and sporozoites are nothing but the infectious form of Plasmodium.
Sir, can you please repeat?
Yes. Plasmodium enters the human body. Plasmodium enters the human body as sporozoites. This is the spelling, sporozoites. And also, it sounds like they are spores, right?
Yes, sir.
So sporozoites are nothing but infectious form of Plasmodium. Only in this form, it can infect a human system. Okay. Plasmodium enters the human body as sporozoites through the bite of infected female Anopheles mosquito. Through the bite, as you can see here, this is stage first thing, through the bite of infected female Anopheles mosquito. Then let's go to second stage. What happens? So the first thing that these sporozoites do when they enter into the human blood, because when mosquitoes bite, they basically are biting to suck the blood, right? Because females, as I have already told you, female mosquitoes need the blood for what? Why do they need the blood? Remember, I told you in the last class only? Yes, Parker, go ahead. Why do mosquitoes bite us? And I told you that only female mosquitoes bite humans. Male mosquitoes never bite humans. This biting long proboscis, that they needle-like proboscis, is only a characteristic feature of the female mosquito, because they need the blood for proper development of their embryos, to give nutrition to their embryos. Is it okay? Does that make sense, everyone? Remember it?
Yes, sir.
That's why only the female, because only they have the eggs and embryos in their body, only they need uh, human blood. Males do not need human blood. They never bite humans because they do not need human blood for their survival or nutrition or development, anything. Okay, so what do males feed on then? Any idea? Where are male mosquitoes? If all the mosquitoes that are biting us are females, so during the night, where are the males? You can sometimes find a male also in your room or around the females, but not mostly. So males will not have a proboscis like females, a needle-like proboscis. Males normally feed on the nectar of grass, like the flowers, tiny flowers in the grass. So they are nectar sucking. So they have a long coiled proboscis like other nectar sucking insects like honeybees or butterflies. And they're very tiny. So they normally are in the gardens where there are grasses, and they're not biting you. It's the females that need human blood. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. The second thing, the moment they enter the human blood, they reach the liver. So the target organ, this is the first target organ. This is a question that comes in NEET. Which is the first target organ of sporozoites or plasmodium? Since we think it is
Liver.
RBC, we always put it as RBC, but it's not RBC. The first target organ where they go when they're in the blood is liver. And you know why they go to liver? It's very difficult for them to stay protected or stay unharmed or uncaught in the blood, because in the blood we also have WBCs, we also have immune cells. All the immune cells are in the blood only. So you would not like to travel in blood and get exposed to these immune cells where immune cells will kill you. So they go and take a hideout in liver. Okay. In the liver, what they do is they reproduce asexually. So the third stage is liver is the organ where they reproduce asexually. And you know that asexual reproduction is simply what? They just multiply, like they divide, the cell divides and they increase in number. So the parasite reproduces asexually in the liver cells. And then when they have reproduced enough in hepatocytes, hepatocyte is nothing, the word hepat is used for liver and cyte is a cell. So hepatocyte is a liver cell. And if I say that a person is suffering from hepatitis, what does it mean? Hepatitis means
Lung disease.
hepatitis. Hepat means liver. So how can hepatitis means lung disease?
Liver.
Yes, it's a liver inflammation. Itis always means inflammation that happens because of infection. So inflammation is the response of the body to an infection. So if I'm saying hepatitis, it's inflammation of the liver. If I'm saying carditis, it's inflammation or infection in the heart. If I say renalitis, it's infection in the kidneys because renal word is used for kidneys. Similarly, if I say conjunctivitis, that's very common. I think you know about conjunctivitis, right?
No, sir.
No, conjunctiva. It's the layer of the eye, right? The conjunctiva that gets infected. So people get these swollen red eyes. This also in like it can be spread. So conjunctivitis is the inflammation of the conjunctiva. Have you heard of arthritis? I'm sure you must have heard of the word arthritis.
Yes, sir.
What happens in arthritis?
It's a
This
bone
is how
problem.
biology becomes easier. Yes. What does the word arthro means? Arthra. ARTHRA or RO. Where have you heard this word before? So if you can connect words in biology, if you understand words, then you will understand a lot about that word. You don't have to remember each and everything. Haven't you read about arthropods? Arthropoda? What is an arthropoda? People, what is an arthropod? Phylum Arthropoda, the biggest phylum in the animal kingdom, followed by mollusks, the second biggest phylum in animal kingdom. What is arthropoda? Come on.
Like
Yeah. Yes, Rabia.
the members in the arthropods, they have like a joint leg, something like that.
Yes. Yes. The word arthro means jointed, and the word poda means appendages. Poda. You also have studied the same word poda in pseudopodium, right? In amoeba. Amoeba give rise to a pseudopodium. That pseudopodium is called pseudopodium because pseudo means false, and podium there also means poda or feet or appendages. So since amoeba is a shapeless organism, it does not have a true appendage. So whatever it sends out to catch the prey is a pseudopodium, pseudopoda. Arthropoda is joint appendages, so their legs look like they are jointed together in 3-4 bits and pieces. So their joints are outside because all insects have a exoskeleton made up of chitin. So these are all words, these are all concepts you can connect dots. Now, what is an exoskeleton? Exo means outside, skeleton means the framework, the dhacha of the body. So humans also have a skeleton, but it is inside the body. It is not exposed. You cannot see the skeleton. For that, you have to do an X-ray. So our skeleton is covered by tissues and muscles and skin. So we call it endoskeleton. In humans, the skeleton is inside the body. In insects, the skeleton is outside on the outer layer made up of chitin. So that's called exoskeleton. And since the skeleton is outside and all the tissues are inside, it looks like they are jointed. So arthropoda is jointed appendages. So the word arthro is for joints. And if I'm saying now a disease is there called arthritis, so you know what does arthro means and what does itis mean. So can you tell me what happens in arthritis? Without me telling you the definition or you remembering or mugging up anything. Can you tell me now what is arthritis?
Inflammation of the joints.
Perfect. No mugging up, no remembering facts. You know arthritis means inflammation of the joints, and this is what happens mostly in old age or post middle age, that people gets their joints inflamed, so it causes pain, swelling, difficulty in movement, etc. Because the synovial fluid which is present between two joints that starts to wear off. Yeah.
Sir,
Yes, Parker.
so what is inflammation?
Yes, good question. What is inflammation? So whenever there is an infection in the body, whatever causes the infection, our immune system tries to fight it, right? So
Yes.
how it will fight it is by mounting a war response. So there will be a lot of cells dying, killing of the cells, dying of the cells, toxins are produced, and that causes inflammation in that region. So any of you have been stung by a bee anytime? A bee or a wasp? Are there bees common
No, sir.
in place where you live? So you're protected by a lot of things actually. So not much vegetation or forestation is helping you. But if you know, if you are bitten by a bee or a wasp, that region instantaneously becomes red and also warms up and start causing a pain, right? Swelling, pain, redness, and heating up. These are all the signs of inflammation. Okay. So inflammation also can happen when an organ is infected or attacked by pathogens or because of toxin substances. So body in response does inflammation, and that inflammation causes problem to us. So if joints gets inflamed because of uh, so all our joints are basically two bones which are rubbing together. So have you ever thought that there must be something like a lubricant, just like in motors or motor vehicles or machines? Whenever there is a mechanical part that moves or rubs against itself or rub against another part, what do we put there? We put oil or grease or something, a lubricant, right? So that they don't
Yes.
just wear off rubbing against each other. So our bones are also like that. So the bigger bones, they always are filled with a fluid called synovial fluid, which is present between two joints. And that's how our bones do not get, sanded down or wear off. But in old age, if the synovial fluid is not forming up because of issues or it's not there, then your bones will start literally rubbing against each other and it will cause an inflammation there. So it's called arthritis. Okay,
Yes, sir.
that's inflammation. Okay. Whenever we have a bacterial infection also, we show inflammation against it. So if it is a local infection, like in the nose by rhinovirus, you will always see your nose getting red, and sometimes there is swelling in the nose or in the throat also, and lots of discharge comes out. That's all a inflammation that body is trying to fight the virus with. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So hepatocyte, we were on hepatocyte, then we deviated a lot. Anyways, but it was good. You can now connect dots. So this is how you should start thinking if you're studying biology and you wish to do good in science or you want to pursue science later on. Okay. And for your boards and entrance, it's really helpful if you develop such ways to keep things and concepts in your head. So the third thing they do is they reproduce asexually in hepatocytes. Once they have increase the number, now they are not afraid of getting killed in the blood. Okay, so how many sporozoites do you think a mosquito can deposit when it bites? Not many, right? Maybe 100, 200, 500, 1,000, not more than that, right?
Yes,
Because
sir.
mosquito bite itself is very tiny. Mosquito itself is very tiny. And how many plasmodiums? Our body is huge. So if all these plasmodium that entered as sporozoites stay in the blood, in a course of one day only, all our immune cells will hunt them down and kill them. So they need to increase their number. So they first go to liver, they hide there, they increase their number without coming in contact with immune cells. And when they have increased their number to millions and millions, then they burst open the cells, the hepatocyte, and come into the blood flow. Okay, then they are released into the blood from the liver. And when they come into the blood this time, they are not like 100 or 1,000, they are millions and billions. And then they go and attack RBC. So this is the fourth. So RBC in the blood is their second target. Okay, second target cell. So they reproduce asexually. Again, they go into the RBC. They reproduce again asexually. The same thing that they were doing in the hepatocyte. And every around there is a cycle. I think around every 48 hours, they burst and come out of RBCs in huge numbers. And this is where, if you know anyone who has suffered from malaria, one thing you will ask them and they will always tell you is that the patient will feel shivers and chills in a periodic manner. So it will be okay in the day, no chills, no shivers, just some fever, feeling weak. And the moment there will be night, they will feel like huge chills and shivers and cold. They will start shivering. That happens because of this cycle. So they are released from RBCs in a cyclic manner, and whenever they are released, they also release a toxin. So these sporozoites release something called hemozoin, hemozoin toxin. The word heme means hemoglobin. What does the word heme?
Hemoglobin.
Heme is related to iron or blood. Okay. So hemozoin is the toxin that's released in blood whenever they burst RBC and come out. And because of this hemozoin toxin, you feel a lot of chill and shivers in the body in a periodic manner. The patients feel that in a periodic manner. Is that clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
So you will see that Plasmodium depends and rely on human host to reproduce asexually. Without human host, they cannot increase their number to millions and millions. And the last thing before they leave the human host, the last thing that they do is they also develop gametocytes. Apart from reproducing asexually, in the same RBC, they develop, which is the fifth stage here, I'm marking. So they increase their number, they infect the human, first the liver, then the RBC. And before they are leaving human host, they develop gametocytes. And what are gametocytes?
Which can produce more eggs.
Which can, yes, which can reproduce sexually. That's what gamete means, right? Gametes are male and female sexual cells, and they can then fuse to make egg, like embryo, right? Zygote and embryo. So an egg and a sperm kind of a thing, right?
Yes, sir.
So before they leave human host, like this is the stage where they leave human host, they make sure that they have everything ready for sexual reproduction, but they do not do sexual reproduction in human system. They only do asexual reproduction in human system. So where do they do the sexual reproduction? They do the sexual reproduction in the mosquito host. So they have two hosts. It's a bi-host pathogen, and both the hosts are very important. So mosquito here is not just a vector, but also a proper host. So these gametocytes then enter inside a mosquito again, which is sixth stage, when a female mosquito, which is not infected, a normal mosquito comes and bites a human who is infected. So it is very important that you protect yourself from mosquitoes, but it is also equally important to protect the patient who is suffering. The patient should not be bitten by mosquitoes also, because when the patient who's affected is bitten by mosquitoes, the gametocytes enter inside the mosquito now. And in the seventh stage, the fertilization and the development, the sexual reproduction happens in the mosquito's gut. So you can write down asexual reproduction in human and sexual reproduction in mosquito gut. Sexual reproduction in mosquito gut. And from the gut, it comes to salivary gland. And again, in the salivary gland, which is stage 8, they get stored as sporozoites. Sporozoites are mature infective stages. Okay. And again, you know what's going to happen. It's a cycle. So this female mosquito now has sporozoites in the salivary glands. It will again go and bite another healthy male and will spread malaria. So from 8, you come back to stage 1. Are all these stages clear to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm giving you 3 minutes to look at this diagram, everything that I have marked on board. Note down whatever you want to note and just go through it and ask me if you have, because the question from this will surely come in boards also and in entrances.
Sir,
You should expect, yes, go ahead. Okay.
sir, in the sexual reproductions are like when another mosquito bites the infected person, but isn't that mosquito also a female
Yes, so the
who's biting?
female does not have to reproduce. Yes, that mosquito is a female again. And in that female, there was no sporozoites from before. Like it was a healthy mosquito, I could say. And in that mosquito's gut, these gametocytes have entered, the gametocytes of Plasmodium. So the gametocytes of Plasmodium will fuse together, which is called fertilization, in the gut of the mosquito. And when they will fuse, they will make sporozoites. And these sporozoites will come and will be stored in the salivary gland of the mosquito. And this is how, when the next time this mosquito will bite anyone, it will spread Plasmodium. Okay.
Yes, sir.
They mostly do not affect the mosquito, because if they will affect the mosquito and kill the mosquito, they will never enter a human and won't be able to reproduce in large numbers. Make sense? Does that answer your questions, Parker? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So everyone has noted down everything from board. If anyone has a
Yes, sir.
question, please ask. Okay. Shall I move forward if you have no question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So some things that you should note down is that the malarial parasite, write down, Plasmodium requires two hosts to complete its life cycle. Plasmodium requires two hosts to complete its life cycle. So if you if you think carefully, humans are hosts for Plasmodium, right? They are a parasite to us and we are their hosts. They are our endoparasites, pathogenic endoparasite. Make sense? Yes?
Yes, sir.
What are mosquitoes? Mosquitoes are also host, plus they are also
Parasites.
vectors. Mosquitoes can't be parasites, no? Parasites live on the body of the host or either inside the body of the host. So Plasmodium live and complete its life cycle. We would have called mosquito just a vector if it was only responsible for transmitting. Okay. Like in case of dengue, dengue happens because of what is the causative agent of dengue? Dengue fever? What causes dengue? People, dengue, you know what is the dengue? Dengue fever?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's also caused by,
A
not caused.
mosquito.
Yeah, it's not caused by a mosquito. There, the mosquito is a vector. Dengue is caused by a virus called dengue virus, DENV, DENV. So DENV, the virus, is dengue virus. It causes dengue fever. It is a viral infection. There, the mosquito, which is called Aedes aegypti, okay, that is the vector. But this virus does not need Aedes aegypti to complete its life cycle, because everything that it does that related to its replication, it does in humans. It only needs mosquito to be transported from somewhere else into the human body. So in case of dengue, we will call the mosquito just a vector, not a host. But in case of malaria, we will call it a host plus a vector. Why? Because malarial parasite, which is a protozoa, Plasmodium, it relies on mosquito also to complete the sexual half of its life cycle. So sexual reproduction can only happen in mosquito gut. It cannot happen in humans. And asexual reproduction and causing the disease happens in humans, and it cannot happen in the mosquitoes. Does it make sense, everyone? The difference
Yes, sir.
between why we call something as a vector and why we call something as a host?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So um, I'll talk about another. So there are few more. So there is one more protozoa about which you have to study, and that's called ant amoeba histolytica. It's an amoeba, but it's a huge, big amoeba. You know about amoeba already, right? What are amoeba? What is an amoeba? You have made amoeba's diagram, right? It lives in water and it does not have a proper shape. It can just move by changing the shape, right? It
Yes,
sends
sir.
pseudopodia. Yeah. So ant amoeba is a huge amoeba. It's called histolytica because the word histo is related to tissues, histology, study of tissues, and lytica means lysis, breakdown, or damaging, degrading, digesting. So ant amoeba histolytica is a protozoa. It enters into the large intestine of humans and it can cause amoebiasis, also known as amoebic dysentery. And if it enters into other part of the body, other tissues of the body from the intestine, it starts eating up the tissue. It starts breaking down the tissue. That's why it's called histolytica. It becomes really severe if it enters into vital organs or the brain. It can just chew up brain, regions of brain, and the person will not even know. And there have been cases where entamoeba histolytica infections has happened to people and they didn't know it. and through blood it entered their head in the brain, and there it started killing the neurons and the parts of the brain, and the person only got to know when they suffered severe headaches or abnormalities in their behavior and other things that brain control. They went to doctor and they got the MRI done, and they realized, oh, a part of their brain is no longer there because it's chewed up by Entamoeba histolytica. So they produce toxins or enzymes that degrade tissues. So that's where the name comes, histolytica. So, but it's more commonly it's not known for tissue damage mostly because it first thing that it causes is dysentery. It enters the large intestine and it causes severe constipation, abdominal pain, cramps, and it starts eating the layers of large intestine, because of which lot of mucus and blood comes out through the poop. And of course, at this first stage only, anyone will be terrified and they will go to doctor, and the doctor will find out that, oh, you are infected by Entamoeba histolytica, and before it moves to other parts of the body, let's treat it and kill it, and then the infected person will be treated and it's fine. And Entamoeba histolytica also uses vectors, like mechanical vectors, like housefly. So what do housefly do? They just wander around. They sit on these like the poops from infected people. So if infected people have left food products uneaten, or if they have fecal matters, so one of the way by which amoebic dysentery spreads is in places where people go in open fields for defecating, in rural areas where not much of education or awareness is there. People defecate in the open, and on that defecated fecal matter, flies can sit and they can take the spores on their feet of Entamoeba histolytica, and then they will fly around and sit on places from where a person can get the spores inside their intestines, like by drinking infected water or eating infected food. And once these spores are inside the intestine, they will grow into proper Entamoeba histolytica and will cause amoebic dysentery. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So there are three things that can cause infection. All come to open your NCRTs and come to the part where amoebic dysentery is there. Can you all open the book, and someone can tell me the page number? Because if you have the newer books, the revised printed books, then the page number is 132. And if you have the older books, someone can tell me the page number. It's after the plasmodium life cycle. There must be a big diagram. And then there must be a small paragraph called amoebic dysentery. Anyone found it? Chapter is human health and diseases.
148.
148. Yes. So come to page 148, those who have the older versions. Do you see amoebiasis? And do you also see ascariasis, elephantiasis?
Yes,
These
sir.
three things? Yes. So I want you to read amoebiasis like this one page where they talk about worms that cause infection, and ringworms, worms, amoeba, these three things that can cause infection, and what do they do. So basically you have to remember or write down the name of the disease, the causative agent, and the symptoms. If there is a specific organ target, Okay, and then and next class. Everyone